So we are in 10 days, day 10 of the August video challenge and yesterday's challenge. So I didn't do this video yesterday, but the challenge was to tell your story. How did you get there? Whatever it is that you're doing, what led you to this place? And what happens, guys, is for most of us, we either assume that everybody already knows, or we assume that nobody cares. And so we end up living these lives, having coffees with people, doing business, but we never really let people in on who we are, why we're here, how we got here, why we love being here. And it really robs people of the ability to connect with us at a deeper level. And as I was coaching, right, every good coach, I believe, is usually convicted of the things they're coaching their people through. And as I was coaching people through their story, I thought, man, I haven't told my story in forever. And so if you've got nothing better to do, then I'm going to tell it to you guys for a few minutes. You know, my story really starts in my 20s. I spent it as a youth pastor. And at the time, I was a fifth generation pastor. And so I really thought that that's what I was going to do my whole life. And I had just really committed myself to that. I had been, what was interesting about that season of my life is I was in my early 20s and I didn't know what I was doing. And I wanted to be a sports agent. I wanted to be an ESPN anchor. Like, I wanted my life to revolve around sports. And so that's what I was going to college for. I had no desire to be in church ministry. I did not feel that calling on my life. And I remember one summer going to camp with our high school kids from church. And I was the counselor for a group of ninth grade boys. And that week at camp, it was just different. And we had a blast, even though they were pains in my butt all the time. And I remember sitting at this lake in Colorado. I was on like patrol for where kids checked in, and I call my dad to just kind of update him and my mom on the week. And I just began to say, Dad, I don't know, something's different about this time, because I'd been past years. And I'll never forget, he said, Kyle, he said, maybe God is tugging on your heart for you to go into ministry. And guys, I'll never forget it. I get goosebumps every time I tell the story. Like, I burst into tears because my dad affirmed what I didn't know how to articulate. And so that started this process of me quitting college, a semester short of graduating, and interning at our church. And I remember the first day of my internship, they fired one of the youth pastors. And so on my first day of my internship, they put me over an entire group of kids, which is crazy that any of those parents trusted me to do something positive with their children. But I spent 9 years moving through the ranks and being an intern, being an assistant, being over sixth grade, being over junior high, being over all of junior high and high school. And then, guys, what happened was, as these years went on, the mega church environment, which I was in, can be a very tumultuous environment. There's great things, but there's bad things. And I began to feel this sense of burnout. And about 7 years in, God began again to just put little seeds in my heart that began to kind of grow. And I started having these thoughts of, am I being used to my greatest ability? Am I making the biggest impact that I can make being where I'm at? And I began to pray about it. And it took 2 years. But what I ultimately felt God tell me was, Kyle, what if I can use you more in the business world? Take that heart of a pastor into the business world, and let's go make an impact in people's lives that may or may not ever step foot in the church that I might be the pastor of. And so, guys, I got to tell, I don't tell this part of the story very often, but because this is my video, I can do whatever I want. I, in a crazy turn of events, I informed my pastor at the time that my family and I, at the time, it was Harrison, me, and Lana. Harrison was 6 months old. We were going to move to Oklahoma, and I'd actually started talking to a church up there, very preliminary, and I pulled my pastor aside, my campus pastor, and told him that we were moving to Oklahoma. We didn't know when, but I wanted him to know. And long story short, guys, they fired me the next day. And I had been in that church for 20 years. And the next day, gone. Just like that. And so what's fascinating now, looking back about our story, is, right, I already told you, I felt like God called me into the business world. But the minute I got fired, what did I do? I ran to what was comfortable. And so I went heavy in with this new church opportunity. And guys, they took me through the interview process. This is an incredibly large church. They took me through this very intense process. And at the end of it, guys, they essentially pulled me aside and told me, "You're not going to be a great fit here." And they sent me home without a job. And the crazy thing is our house sold in one day. While we were in Oklahoma interviewing at this church, our house sold in McKinney. Our 6-month-old was at home with my parents in Texas. We'd already looked at houses in Tulsa because we just knew, like, this is what was next for us. And God was like, "Nope, I told you, you're supposed to be in the business world, bro." And so he slams this door shut. We go back home. My brother had been working for a roofing company, and he said, "Man, come work with us. This is so fun. Like, you'll love it. You're great with people." So I jump into roofing, and I don't tell this story either very often because, again, it just doesn't really matter in simple conversation. But for the sake of this video, I think it's important. So I jump on board with this roofing company, and about 6 months in, I've now moved to Oklahoma. I'm running the Oklahoma part of this company. My brother's in Texas working for this company. And because of my grandfather, we have connections to a lot of churches. And so my brother and I got us connected to a church in San Antonio. We were due about $120,000 in commission on this church. And the owner of this company decided not to pay us. And so now we're at this crossroad where we can't stay. We're not going to sue. And so we decide to start our own roofing company. And so my dad and my brother and myself, we started Draper & Sons Construction. And this, guys, is really where I began to learn marketing and social media and networking and building relationships and creating rapport with people and serving. And this is where all this took place. And the huge turning point for me for what I do now is, in roofing, you're very dependent on hailstorms. Like, that's a big part of your ability to work. And so there hadn't been a hailstorm for a while, and I'd been networking and doing videos and just doing whatever I thought that I could. And then, guys, a hailstorm came. And in 24 hours, I received over 100 phone calls, texts, DMs, and very quickly I realized, holy cow, what I do actually works. While all these other roofing companies are out there knocking doors and hustling, I'm in my living room fielding phone calls, having conversations. This social media thing is real. And so that was the moment for me where I went, oh my gosh, people need to understand this. And so a little thereafter, I got out of roofing because at 6'3", 300 pounds, the roof is just not an incredible place for me. And if you've ever been on a roof in the summertime in the South, you're basically food. Like you are literally being cooked while you're up there. And so I got out of roofing and I started a company with a buddy of mine building websites for realtors. And and so this company, my business partner was the smart one. He was the back end guy. He built the websites. I was the hype man. I'd met a ton of realtors through roofing. And so we started this company and we were super excited about it. And what happened through that was I got tired of cold calling realtors. And I literally one night, guys, I just prayed because I don't know if you're like me or not, but when I don't know what to do, all I know to do is pray. And I just remember going, God, what am I good at? And what do realtors suck at? And yes, I say sucks to God. That's the relationship that we have. And that's what I asked him. What am I good at? What do realtors suck at? And what does that look like? What does the gap look like? What does the bridge look like for me to create value for people? Maybe this, for some of you guys, is the prayer that you need to be praying. And what he gave me was, Kyle, you're a great communicator. You stood on stage and preached for 9 years, and they're bad at social media. I don't think he said sucks back to me. They're bad at social media. And so, guys, I kid you not, and there is a lesson in this for so many of you. The moment I got that clarity, I called the 5 Keller Williams offices in Oklahoma City that I knew from roofing. And I said, hey, if I were to teach a Facebook class, could I come teach it at your office? And they all were like, how much? And I said, it's free. They all said yes. I had 5 events on the calendar without a class. I did not have a class. And as I began to freak out about this, because I'm not sure that I really thought they'd say yes, God gave me another truth, which was, Kyle, if you always know 1% more than them, you'll always have something of value to give them. So you don't need to go be the expert yet. You just need to be a step ahead so you have the ability to teach. And guys, that was my goal, is I just learned enough to teach and build a new class, learn enough to teach. And here we are 6 years later, roughly. And it's mind-blowing to me because I taught hundreds of classes for free to earn people's trust, to sell them websites. A couple years into that, I just realized that I was having way more fun speaking in front of rooms of people, loving on people, than I was selling websites. And so I made the decision to leave that company and go full-time into coaching at the time and speaking. And so I got to coach for a while. And then this is probably the dumbest part of my story, but in 2019, at the end of the year, I had 42 one-on-one clients, and I decided to stop one-on-one coaching because I was going to launch more out into speaking. And then COVID happened. So I got to speak at NAR's national event in San Francisco in 2019. And I crushed it. 400 plus people in the room. I booked a bunch of speaking gigs from it. I quit all my coaching clients. Boom, COVID happens. I lose all my speaking gigs. This is a wild turn of events, right? One that I was not prepared for. And so now, as we are burning through our savings account, I get a call from a realtor friend of mine that was a coaching client. And she says, hey, you know that content compounding thing that you teach? If I hired a teenager, could you teach them how to do that for me? Guys, I had been teaching at the time content compounding for 2 years. I came up with the process, and I thought this would help realtors save time. And I started teaching them how to do it. But it never crossed my mind to start a company. COVID happens. I get this phone call from a friend. Within a week, I had filed an LLC, started hiring people, and content compounding launched in July of 2020. Unbelievable. And that company is is still around today. We're doing incredible things with incredible people. And every day I'm reminded of how good God is, because he could have given me the idea to start that company way before I did, but he knew COVID was coming. He knew that I was going to need something. And so he kept it from my mind until it was necessary. And then boom, he gave it to me. And I get to pinch myself every day, because it is mind-blowing to me that I get to make a living doing what I would absolutely do for free. Leading an incredible team with content compounding that's at 17 employees, traveling the country speaking, loving on, encouraging people. Right? We've got a coaching company that is spun out of all of this stuff called Academy 18 that I do with one of my business partners. And then now we're preparing to launch into our virtual assistant company, because we've done such a great job hiring virtual assistants for content compounding. Now we're going to pay that forward and go help other people do it, because it's unbelievable. And I'm glad that I've told the story the way that I've told it, because there have been so many painful moments over the course of the last 9 years. But I wouldn't trade them for the world, because it's given me opportunities to forgive, to extend grace, to look in the mirror and go, whoa, bro, you are so full of yourself. You are so arrogant. What are you doing? Get rid of that version of yourself, right? It's allowed for so many of these refining moments, so that now I have the ability to humbly get in front of people and serve them, because I love them and want to see the best for their lives. And I can honestly say that it has nothing to do with me. And so I want you guys to understand this, that when you see me on these big stages, when you see these opportunities, they have come at the expense and the cost of a lot of pain and a lot of failure and a lot of frustration and a lot of broken promises, because it's been hard. It has been a crazy journey. And I am so thankful for this being my story, because I would not be the husband that I am. I would not be the father that I am. I would not be the friend that I am if it weren't for the refining process of life that we get the choice to listen to or not. And so there you have it. That is the story. I appreciate you guys watching. Keep going. People need you. See ya.